Hello, I'm Stephen Huddleston, and I am the Reference and Research Specialist at the Library in the Learning Commons here at Pikes Peak State College. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the different types of sources: primary, secondary, and tertiary. Now, if you go into the academics section here, down to the library, to the research guides, and here to the English tab, there's a wonderful short little definition guide under evaluating resources and then source types that gives you a quick breakdown of the types of sources: primary, secondary, and tertiary. A primary source is our original documents created or experienced at the same time as the event being researched. Now, I like to use the analogy of a criminal court case, or just any type of court case for that matter. And I'm sure everyone here has seen some sort of legal drama on television or on film. And so you know a little bit of what I'm talking about when I use this analogy. So you want to think of a primary source as witnesses to the event in question. Now, that could mean an eyewitness, but it could also mean someone who was nearby who may be able to contribute some information. So let's say the event we're talking about was a fire. Someone might be able to contribute information, even though they didn't see the fire, that perhaps they smelled smoke. They saw people running down the street and they heard some of those people yelling fire. That's a primary source. They are in geographic and temporal proximity in time, right, to the event. And they can relate some sort of information that can be directly tied back to that event. Now, a secondary source are works that analyze, interpret, or assess a historical event, generally using primary sources. Now, secondary sources might also use other secondary sources to build upon, but the key thing that we want to focus on here are works that analyze, interpret, or assess, right? This is very important. Secondary sources aren't just going to be just factual information about a source. They're going to analyze it. And generally, quite often, they are going to come to some sort of conclusion. So the analogy that I use here is when you're in a court case, these are those experts that get called in. The people who are looking at perhaps burn patterns, or they're looking at DNA, or they're looking at some other evidence. They weren't physically at the crime scene, maybe. They didn't see the crime happen, but they are looking at evidence after the fact, and they are analyzing that evidence and interpreting that evidence and using then their expertise. This expertise component is important too. We're not talking about someone giving an opinion, saying, I think, I feel, I believe. This is evidence-based interpretation and analysis. They are using the evidence and their expertise together to interpret what happened, right? And so that's very, very key with secondary sources. Now, tertiary sources are sources that identify, locate primary and secondary sources. And what that essentially means is that the analogy here is that those are those legal books that just give us the facts. They're going to give us the facts of what is a particular law. Here's the text of that law. What was the ruling in a previous case? Here's the text of that ruling. Tertiary sources, or what we also call encyclopedic resources, are resources that are just going to give us the facts. Who was there? How many people were there? What was the date? Where did it happen? The sort of factual information that isn't going to be disputed by a reasonable person. Secondary sources, instead of just addressing who, what, when, and where, are usually trying to address why and how. Things where there's some room for debate. And so when you're thinking about dealing with secondary sources, you want to think about them in that sort of context. They are making an interpretation to try and come to an answer, usually to address a question or questions, starting with why or how. Now, some sources can get complicated, and how you use those sources can vary based upon how you're using them. And if you run into any questions about how to use these sources, about what type of source you're looking at, about finding a particular type of source, particularly primary sources, please come visit us in the Reference Center in the Library of the Learning Commons. We're more than happy to help you. You can go back here to, and I will show you, on this landing page for the library, you have a couple of different options. You can use this chat with a librarian feature, and that chat with a librarian feature will send a message during business hours, 8 to 5. We'll send a message to all of the librarians in the Pikes Peak, in the Colorado College communities system. Every community college librarian in Colorado will be tapped in, and there's usually multiple of us monitoring this at any given time. If you want to speak directly with me or our lead reference librarian, Larissa Powers, our emails are here. We're more than happy to set up a one-on-one meeting to help you with citations, to help you find sources for secondary sources, primary sources, whatever it is you may need. We can meet with you in person or via Zoom. Just please contact us if you need help with any of these things. Hopefully, this has been helpful, and good luck with all of your projects.